Shizzle, the last 2 episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man were absolutely amazing. I'll be making another video after this one in the next week or so, reviewing the series as a whole, but as per the rest of my videos on the series, I wanted to focus in on the last 2 episodes first. I really wanted some time to home in on the finale because I genuinely think, as you've probably seen from the title, this is the boldest thing a Spider-Man show has ever done. And in this video, I'm going to talk about why it subverts all expectations and why I like that we have something as daring as this. So without further ado, spoilers ahead, let's get into it. The last 2 episodes really caught me off guard. Not only were they brilliant, but time travel? Really? Let's get one thing very, very clear. Time travel and Spider-Man should not go together under many circumstances. Time travel is a plot device that I really don't think works with Spider-Man that much. On some level, it can create interesting scenarios, but since Peter Parker is a character that has a lot of his foundations, if not all of them, built solely on consequence from his actions in his past, him having access to time travel and having that in a writing team's disposal really does reduce the stakes of any sort of Spider-Man story quite dramatically. However, I thought here it worked perfectly. The way that the show wrapped up by calling back to the spider bite was genius, and in a way gave a fresh new take on the origin story without repeating most of the same beats. Peter becomes the consequence of his own journey, which I find really fitting for this version of the character and the story that they were trying to tell throughout the entire season. This ending also manages to pull off the whole, oh, it's Peter's destiny to become Spider-Man, without it feeling contrived or diminishing the everyman aspect of the character. That spider could have genuinely bit anyone, but it so happened to bite Peter, which was a casualty of Peter's fight with the symbiote and Doctor Strange. And it wasn't like that spider was 100% destined to bite Peter, because as we've seen, it actually crawled onto someone else's backpack during the opening of the show. And as it's been revealed after the show has ended, Spider-Gwen is actually going to be showing up in the next season. So this character here probably is Gwen Stacy from the first episode. So the same spider probably goes on to bite Gwen at the same time, which I think is incredibly interesting. And we're going to have to see what kind of storyline they pull out in season 2 to tackle this character. And while we're on the fight between Peter Strange and the symbiote, I also want to contradict something I said in an earlier video. A few weeks ago when the show was first airing, I, along with a lot of you guys as well, weren't a fan of the fact that Peter's spider bite came from what seemed like a different universe through a Doctor Strange portal. It felt really out of place and a little bit too crazy for a version of Spider-Man which was starting from basics. I felt like this decision was a product of the Spider-Verse and the MCU and the need to have everything kind of be big and bolsterous when it comes to Spider-Man. I felt like they did it because it seemed cool and for no other reason other than that. I even went on to record to say that I just didn't like this, and that if I was to write this show, this is definitely not how I do it. It felt too gimmicky, like this was the writer's way of forcing themselves to make a point about this Spider-Man being in a timeline similar to the MCU. Either way, I wasn't a fan. But damn, when I saw the portal open and the symbiote appear, I was hella surprised. Not only was I surprised, but excited, impressed, and maybe even slightly relieved. Yeah, they did something clever, and it all kind of wrapped up and it all kind of made sense in the end. A major issue with modern Spider-Man adaptations is a lot of them don't really surprise us as fans anymore. A lot of us are so ingrained into the lore of the character that when something even slightly references an event, character, or a storyline, it's like we clock on to what the writers are trying to do straight away. Some major examples can actually be found in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man as well. Like, for example, when Lonnie gets roped into the gang, you know where that's heading, you know he's going to become Tombstone. Or when Otto's rivalry hits a boiling point with Norman, you know he's heading towards becoming Doc Ock, and I could list a million other examples. But at no point did I ever think the finale of this show would wrap up exactly how it started, which genuinely surprised me, and it was a positive surprise. And because of this, I think this episode is really bold. I know there is a slight dislike circulating on the internet for episode 10, and I know that this kind of storytelling for Spider-Man is out of some fans' comfort zones, but this ending is genuinely genius. Not only does it add a fresh new layer to Spider-Man's origin story, but it also ties up this season with a nice little bow on the very top. And I think it subverts expectations perfectly, because not only did no one really see this coming, but the ending of the show wouldn't have actually felt nearly as satisfying without this time loop. Therefore, I believe that this bold choice for the show to include time travel and to loop the show to its beginning was just a genius move in all honesty, and I can't wait to see what the show manages to produce for the second season if they decide to continue with this sort of subverting expectations and doing some things maybe slightly fresh. Speaking of the second season, let's quickly touch upon some of the stuff that they left open-ended. I will touch more upon this in my bigger, bulkier review video, but while we're here, I will mention some things. I thought that they did a fantastic job of setting up things for the second season, and everything is coming together really well. But there was a part of me that kind of felt like a lot was too open-ended. I just had a slight feeling that maybe too much was left unresolved, but maybe that was just me. This is the end of a season. I felt like a lot more had to be wrapped up. Promises have been made throughout the entire first season's runtime, but we didn't get a lot of payoff by the end of episode 10. We have big story threads for season 2 like Doc Ock, Norman, Lonnie, and Nico, which were always going to end up being left for later seasons and continuing into the future. But what about things like Peter and Pearl's relationship that was never revisited after a certain episode? And with them introducing Gwen into season 2, how will that work? Also, despite Peter and Lonnie teaming up as Spider-Man and Tombstone and sort of getting a resolution to that story arc, I felt like they kind of ditched the Peter and Lonnie relationship side of things halfway through the season and was never revisited on a personal standpoint, and I kind of felt like that should have got some sort of resolution since it was a massive plot thread for the entire first season as a whole. Again, people will say that's going to be more of a season 2 thing, but a massive part of this first season's overall theme was about friendships and taking the right path. After a certain point, it kind of felt like Peter and Lonnie didn't really connect as much as they should have. With Peter knowing Lonnie was in a gang for like half the season, you'd assume that he'd actively be looking for him. Apart from the team up during the final 2 episodes, there wasn't much else in the wake of that story. Since it was a major staple of this season, I felt like it needed maybe slightly more substance, or maybe a thicker resolution on the Peter and Lonnie side of things, not the Spider-Man and Tombstone side. Either way, that was just me, and I know we're gonna get that more in season 2, and Peter and Lonnie personally are probably gonna come into conflict later on in season 2 or season 3. But either way, that was just my opinion. Let me know what you thought of the show down below, and make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for my massive detailed review video coming very soon.